Hello dear students, how are you all? I hope everybody is doing well. So today we are starting this amazing chapter, metal and non-metal. So this is a very good chapter and we have also seen about this chapter in class 9. So first of all, let's move on to the next slide and let's talk about the basic introduction of this chapter so that this chapter will going to be very easier to get understand. So guys, we might have heard in class 9 that what is matter? What is matter? So matter is the substance which is made up of particles. Made up of particles. We are surrounded by matter. Everything you are able to see around you is a matter because everything is made up of particles. So we do not need to be worried about it because it is not a very difficult thing. Now if you further classify this matter, then this will be classified into pure matter and impure matter. Okay, so these are two matter. Now guys, what is pure matter? So pure matter is the type of matter that is formed by the same type of particles. Okay, this pure matter is formed by the same type of particles. Let me write it here. Same type of particles. On the other hand, the impure matter are the matter which is made up of two or more than two type of particles, contain two or more type of particle. Okay, so guys, what happen if you further classify this impure matter? Then this will be classified in mixture, and there are two types of mixture, homogeneous and heterogeneous. We will not go in such deep. We will just do one thing. We will classify this pure matter, and this pure matter can be classified into this element and compound. Okay, the element and the compound. Now what is the element? The element is the thing or the substance which cannot be further classified. These are the, you can say, chemicals that cannot further classify. Then what is compound? Compound are the chemicals which can further classify or simplify. Further simplify. Now sir, these are just definition. Let us give some example. So of course there are some examples. If I talk about compound, then H2O, this is a compound. CO2, this is another compound. Water and carbon dioxide. Okay, although these are pure matter, but it can further be classified into hydrogen and oxygen, into this hydrogen element and this oxygen element. So what are the elements now? So elements cannot further classify. If I talk about the example of elements, then you can say oxygen, you can say hydrogen atom. This is what? These are the examples of element. Now guys, this element can further be classified. Let me change the pen. This can further be classified into three types, and the first type is metal. Second type is metalloid, and the last type is non-metal. Okay, so if you further classify the element, then it will be classified into metal and non-metal and metalloid. So here, what do we need to discuss? We will be discussing metal and non-metal. This is our chapter. Okay, this is our chapter. Yet, what we have discussed, we have just seen an introduction about it. Okay, I was just linking this chapter with class 9 so that it will be easier for you to understand this. That matter can be classified into pure and impure matter. Now pure matter can further be classified into element and compound, and element can also be classified into metal and non-metal and metalloids, and this is we will be discussing in this chapter. Now guys, for your information, metals are in abundance. It can be found in very abundance in nature. There are, when in chapter number 5 we will be discussing the periodic table, there you will have to see that there are more than 90 plus metals. Okay, if you count the metals, then you will find then the metals are more than 90 plus. Okay, so most of the elements in our nature are metal. If I talk about non-metal, then these are very less as compared to metals. And when it comes to metalloid, then metalloids are very less in number. So metals are found in very high number. On the other hand, non-metal are less and metalloids are very less. So I hope guys this basic introduction of this chapter have been understood by you. Now after understanding this introduction part, let's move ahead on the next slide and let's talk about what are the metals and what are their properties. So let's move ahead on the next slide. Okay, so here we will talk about the physical properties of metals. Okay, now guys, what are some examples of metals? So Au, this is gold. This is an example of metal. Now Hg, this is what? This is mercury. This is another example of metal. Now Ca, this is calcium. This is also another example of metal. Aluminium, okay, copper, zinc, platinum, magnesium, lead. So these are the example of metal. If you also find around you, you will have to see lots of metals. Okay, and one more thing I want you to know, that there are alloys as well. Now what is this alloy? So alloy is made up of two different metals. Okay, so alloy is a metal which is made up of two different metals. So this can also be asked So you have to remember this. Now let's talk about the example of non-metal. Okay, what is the example of non-metal? So here we are. Let me write it here, non-metal. So guys, carbon is an example of non-metal. Phosphorus, it is also an example of non-metal. Sulfur, it is also an example of non-metal. Chlorine gas, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, okay, bromine. So these are the examples of non-metal. Now guys, let's talk about some of the examples of metalloid as well. Metalloid as well. So we all know what is metalloid. Metalloids have basically both type of characteristics which is found in metal and non-metal. They have both the characteristics. So you can also call it semi-metal or metalloid. Some of the example of metalloid are arsenic, silicon, germanium. Although you do not need to be worry about this metalloid because this is not a part of our syllabus, but you should have the knowledge of these things. I hope guys this thing is clear to you. Now after understanding this, let's talk about the physical properties of metals. So the first physical property of metal is that metals are solids. Metals are what? These are solids. But there is an exception of this, and that is mercury. So mercury it is not solid, it is found in liquid state. Okay, it is found in liquid state. And what is the symbol of mercury? So this Hg is a symbol of mercury. Okay, now guys, metals are hard. You can see that most of the metals around you are hard, but there is some exceptions as well, because in chemistry exceptions are everywhere, so you should be ready for it. Now except lithium, potassium and sodium, these are not so hard. Even you can cut it with the knife. So these are not hard, but most of the metals are hard. So you should be very careful while remembering the exception, because exceptions are the points from where question can be asked. Now metals have metallic luster. Now what does this luster mean? So basically guys, luster means the shininess. Whenever metals are in their pure form, you will see that they will be shining. So it means that metals have luster. Okay. But guys, when I will be teaching you the properties of non-metals, then the properties of non-metals will be opposite. They will be non-lustrous. Okay, they will be soft, and there are other physical properties as well. When I will teach you non-metals, then I will tell you everything. Now let's talk about this fourth point, that metals are malleable. This is very important. Now what does this mean, malleable? So malleable is basically the quality, let me write it here, malleability. This is very important. Let me highlight it for you, malleability. Now guys, the question here is what is the meaning of malleability? So guys, metals have the ability to be beaten into thin sheets. You can make thin sheets of metal. So this property or this quality of metal is known as malleability. Okay, you might have heard that on a sweets there is a very thin layer of silver. So you can see that that layer is very thin. What is this and why is this? Because the metals is very malleable. So I hope guys this property is clear to you. Okay, now gold is very malleable. Okay, gold is very malleable. Now guys, after understanding these properties, let's move ahead on the next slide and let's talk about the other properties of metals. So metals are ductile. Now guys, let's talk about what is this ductility. Ductility. So basically guys, it is also an ability of metal to be drawn into thin wires. Okay, metals can be drawn into thin wire. So this property is known as ductility. Okay, this property is known as ductility. Now guys, if I give you a basic idea that how much can a metal be ductile, so let me write it here. So if you want to see that how much a metal can be ductile, so if you take 1 gram of silver, then you can make 2 kilometer long wire of 1 gram of silver. Okay, let's suppose you are taking Ag. Ag is the symbol of silver. So if you are taking 1 gram of silver, then you can make 2 kilometer long wire. So you can see that how much thin this wire would be. So metals are that much ductile. So this property is known as ductility. I hope guys this point is clear to you that metals can be drawn into wires. These two properties are very important. This ductility and this malleability. Okay, that's why it is highlighted. Now let's talk about the other type of property, and that is metals have high melting point. Metals have high melting point. It means they will melt at very high temperature. But I also told you that in this part there will be lots of exceptions. So here is an exception as well. Gallium and cesium. These have very low melting point. Even if you put it on your palm of your hand, then they will melt. So that means they have such a low melting point. Although we have put it in the metal category, okay, but they have less melting point. But most of the metals have high melting point. Even all the metals have high melting point except gallium and cesium. I hope guys this point is again clear to you. Now after understanding these points, let's talk about the other things as well. Okay, so metals have high boiling point. Metals have high boiling point and there is no exception. So you have to remember that metals have high boiling point and melting point is also very high, as we have seen in the previous slide. But in the case of melting point, there was some exception as well. So guys, now let's talk about the other point. Metals are good conductor of heat. Metals are good conductor of heat. And if I talk about the best conductor of heat, then silver and copper is a very good example. Okay, so basically guys, what does this mean? Good conductor of heat means that heat can be transferred very easily in metals. Okay, because you might have seen, let me give you a very basic example to understand this point. So let's suppose guys, you are cooking food, or let's suppose you are boiling water in a container. So this is your container. Okay, now when this container becomes very hot, at this time, if you stir this container with the help of a metallic spoon, or the spoon which is made up of metal, so after some time you will notice that that spoon will also become hot. Now why does this happen? Because now the heat is transferred to that spoon as well. Heat is transferred to that metallic spoon. So thus we can conclude that metals are the good conductor of heat. And what are the best conductor of heat in metal? So silver and copper are the best conductor of heat. Now guys, there are some exceptions as well, and that is lead and mercury. Although lead and mercury are the metals, but they are not good conductor of heat. They are poor conductor of heat. These lead and mercury are poor conductor of heat. I hope guys this thing is clear to you. Now let's talk about the other point. So metals are good conductor of electricity. Now guys, best conductors of electricity are silver, okay, and copper. So if you are asked what are the best conductor of electricity, then your answer would be copper and silver. Now guys, metals are sonorous as well. Okay, so what does this mean? Sonorous. So basically guys, sonorous means that when you strike metal, then it will produce ringing sound. It will produce ringing sound. So this is known as sonority. This ability of metal to produce ringing sound is known as sonority. So all the metals are sonorous because they produce ringing sound when beaten. I hope guys these properties of metal is clear to you. We have seen these properties. First one is metals are solid, metals are hard, metals have metallic luster, metals are malleable, and metals are ductile, metals have high melting point, and metals have high boiling point as well. They are good conductor of heat, and metals are good conductor of electricity as well, and metals are sonorous. So I hope guys these properties are clear to you. Now after understanding these properties, let's move ahead on the next slide and let's talk about the other points as well. Okay student, so here we are. Now after understanding the properties of metals, we will talk about the properties of non-metals. So students, properties of non-metals are just opposite of metals. Like most of the properties are just opposite of non-metals. So first of all, we will talk about the state of non-metal. Okay, so basically guys, non-metals will be found in, you can also say that it can be found any of the states. It can be solid, it can be liquid, it can be gas. Okay, and you can also see that there is some examples as well, that if you are asked what are some metals or what are some non-metals which is found in solid state, then you will say carbon, sulfur and phosphorus. Okay, these are the non-metals which are found in solid state. Now if you are asked what are some non-metals that are found in liquid state, so bromine, this is found in liquid state. And what are the non-metals which are found in gaseous state? Then oxygen, hydrogen and nitrogen. Okay, these are the non-metals which are found in gaseous state. So I hope guys this thing is clear to you. Now after understanding this point, let's move ahead and let's talk about the second point. So non-metals are soft. Non-metals are soft, and we have seen that metals are hard in nature. But here you can see that non-metals are soft in nature. But there is also an exception, except diamond. Diamond is the hardest natural substance. Diamond is the hardest natural substance, although we have categorized this diamond into non-metal. Okay, but this is hardest substance. But most of the non-metals are soft. Okay, now let's talk about this point number third, that non-metals do not have luster. They do not have luster. Now what is this luster mean? So we all know that luster means shininess. Shininess. We have seen it in the previous slide that metals are lustrous, but here non-metals are not lustrous, they do not have luster. But here also there is an exception. Okay, so what are this exception? Iodine crystal. Iodine crystal. So this is an exception of this property. And there is another example also, and that is diamond. Diamond is also very lustrous. But most of the non-metal, or you can say except iodine and diamond, all the non-metals do not have luster. Now guys, let's talk about the other property. So non-metals are not malleable. These are not malleable. So what is the meaning of this malleable? So I told you that malleability is the ability to be beaten into thin sheets. To be beaten into thin sheets. So it cannot be beaten into thin sheet. Okay. So these are the properties of non-metal. And here guys, you can also see that the properties of non-metals are just opposite of the properties of metal. Okay, I hope this thing is clear to you. Now let's move ahead on the next slide and let's talk about the other important point. Okay guys, so here we will be discussing some other properties of non-metals. So non-metals are not ductile. Now what is the meaning of this ductility? So as we all seen, we have already seen this when we were discussing about the physical properties of metals, that ductility means metals can be drawn metals can be drawn into thin wires. Okay, you can make very thin wires of metal. So this property is known as ductility. But here, as most of the properties of non-metals are just opposite of metals, so that's why metals are ductile but non-metals are not ductile. You cannot draw these non-metals into the thin wires. Okay, so this is what we are saying, that non-metals are not ductile. This is a very important point. Now guys, generally non-metals have very low melting and boiling point. On the other hand, metals have very high melting and boiling point, because there is a very strong bond between the atoms of metal. Now, non-metals are bad conductor of heat. This is also very important. Metals were very good conductor of heat. We have seen this. But here non-metals are bad conductor of heat. It means heat cannot be transferred from one point to another point very easily. Okay, in non-metal. But in metal it is very easy. Now, non-metals are bad conductor of electricity as well. Charges cannot easily flow in non-metal. But there is an exception as well. And that exception is basically graphite. So graphite is a conductor of electricity. And if you are asked why is graphite a conductor of electricity, so basically the reason here is, we will be discussing it on the upcoming chapters, that graphite has a free electron. Okay, it has a free electron, and because of this free electron it will conduct electricity. Because for conducting electricity we need free charges, free ions or free electrons. So in most of the non-metals there is no free charge, free electrons, but except graphite there is a free electron. That's why it is a conductor of electricity. Now, non-metals are not sonorous. Metals are sonorous, but non-metals are not sonorous. Okay, it will not produce ringing sound. So that's why it is not sonorous. So I hope guys these properties of non-metals are clear to you. So now I am ending this lecture and we will meet in the upcoming lecture. Thank you so much and bye bye.